Did you know that some of my most important crops get planted in August? That's right. A lot of my spring crops get planted in the end of August or early September for blooms the following spring. So if you want your 2027 spring to be off the charts and be ready for sales, then you're not going to want to miss this video about pivotal timing for planting in the fall for spring crops. I'm Ruth Ann. I'm from Abundant Blooms Flower Farm in Dorr, Michigan. I sell on about an acre of flowers to florists, and I also help flower farmers with my resources like my online membership and my online course, How to Sell Flowers to Florists. If you would like tips for selling flowers to florists, you can check out my free download all about that. So today I'm going to show you exactly what I plant, when I plant it, and why I've shifted some of my planting dates even earlier from what I used to plant and how I used to plant. And look, I'm using an I Spy book because I couldn't find my clipboard. So on top of flower farming, I also have 5 children and dairy goats, and I homeschool. First of all, why you should plant in the fall. To give you a little bit perspective, I farm in zone 6A. We were 5B, but now supposedly we're 6A. Our frost-free dates are from the middle of May until the middle of October. So we're actually about 90 days from our first fall frost right now, sitting in the middle of July. Planting in the fall for spring crops is very, very, very important, particularly if you're in the north or even if you're in further south than us, because of a few reasons. So when you plant in the fall, cool flowers, we're not planting zinnias, we're planting things like bupleurum and nigella, snapdragons, and a lot of other stuff we'll get into. When you plant in the fall, you're planting small little plants and they're not really getting a lot of top growth. What they're really doing is they're growing roots, and they're going to grow those roots, and then they're going to kind of go dormant all winter long, and they're going to be establishing these really strong roots. And then in the spring, when it warms up and it's the perfect temperature for that specific crop, it'll just spring up in growth and give you a really, really robust crop. For example, if you plant Orlea in the fall, and I direct seed Orlea in the fall, if you do that and you also direct seed it in the spring, your fall crops will always be taller, more robust, and just bigger and branchier and better. They will always be better. My fall planted bupleurum is positively the most amazing bupleurum you and your florists and your customers will ever see in their whole lives. I still spring plant bupleurum also, and it's fine and it's great, but it is not like my massive branching fall planted strong bupleurum. Even if you're in the south, usually you can do some certain weeding practices to get ahead of perennial weeds in the fall with like hoe weeding and different things, so you can really have less difficulty with weeding. So I know, like, I follow Lisa Mason Ziegler a lot. I've taken her course, Flower Farming the Basics, years ago. She always says that she only directs seeds in the fall because her perennial weed pressure is too much in the spring, but she can direct seed in the fall because she can, you know, weed weekly and hoe weed and get on top of the weeds. So that way in the spring, you know, she's decreased the seed bank of weeds, but in the spring she has a difficult time direct seeding. So there are 2 different ways that I plant in the fall. I plant either seeds directly in the ground, or I plant plugs. And I also am mostly going to be talking about planting in the field, but planting in the tunnel has different timing than field planting in the fall. Fall is just kind of a relative term for whenever the weather is like fall in your region. August is not exactly fall, but that's what I call fall planting. Okay, so like I said, I learned a lot of this from Lisa Mason Ziegler's book, Cool Flowers, which was my first flower farming book that I ever got. Or really, I think my first flower book. It's a really great resource also. So some of you, planting in August would be a terrible idea. So hear me out. It depends on your hardiness zone and your frost dates, but basically you want to know particularly your first fall frost. So when do you first get fall frost in the end of your growing season? So for some of you in the north of me, that might be the middle of September. For some of you, that might be like, you know, the middle of December, or you may never get a frost, but you probably do cool down if you're in the United States or in the Northern Hemisphere. So whenever that date is for you, that's kind of when you want to time things off of. So I read Lisa Mason's English book, Cool Flowers, but I've had to change some of the timing based on my own climate, obviously. She always talks about planting 6 weeks before your first fall frost. So for me, that would be like September 1st, and that's okay, but I have found that if I get my direct seeded stuff in the ground in the middle, like late August, it's better. Like the first of like Labor Day, this week Labor Day is late, but usually like Labor Day is positively like the last time that I want to be field planting my fall stuff here in Michigan. So that would be like early September. So I like to have everything in the ground basically before then, because that gives me better roots in the ground. Now, occasionally you can have a really warm fall and it kind of messes things up, but usually that's the best. And obviously it's never going to be perfect. We're dealing with the weather, but that's what I have found to be the best timing. So when I'm direct seeding things, I'm looking like late August. Plugs probably like 1st of September is okay. And like I said, this is for the field. When I first got my high tunnel, just a small caveat here, when I first got my high tunnel, I thought, oh, I'll do the same kind of timing. That was really bad. And I had snapdragons trying to bloom in November because I planted them in the very beginning of September and they loved it. They were doing great. And they didn't bloom for the spring. They were diseased and spindly and terrible. So in the tunnel, I aim for like mid-October, even that early November. But yeah, middle of October. So it's definitely like 6 weeks later. I'm not planting stuff in the fall in my tunnel in the end of August and September. It's later, significantly. So when I'm definitely talking about field planting here. And remember, these are just averages. Like a couple of years ago, we had frost September 23. And, sometimes we don't have frost till 1st of November, but, you just have to kind of go with what is the average because we don't know what's going to happen. This is also like a slight caveat here. This is also a good time of year to be planting your perennials and woody shrubs. Like end of August, September, you're giving them nice, good time to root in the ground. The days are shorter. So even if it's still hot, we have much less daylight and, you got to be watering them. Yes, but it's a great time to plant perennials and woody shrubs also. It can be very hot here in late August and September. So you do need to be watering and taking care of those plants. I just have found better success with planting them late August as opposed to mid-September. What do I plant? So you need to direct seed things hardy to your zone. So you might have a bigger list or a smaller list of what's hardy to your zone, which you can find by looking up in different flower farming books. You can look them up where you're buying seeds. If you're getting them from Johnny's, they'll have the hardiness on there, different things like that. So I have a pretty short list, but it's a very important list. So I direct seed Bupleurum, Nigella, Orlea, and Larkspur, and that's really it. That's what I direct seed. That's not all I plant. That's what I direct seed. These have been reliable for me. I do occasionally have other things that will voluntarily overwinter, and I'll think, oh, maybe I should plant that, and I've tried them, and it just will depend on the winter. So usually I just stick with that list. Things I have tried that have been sometimes successful and sometimes unsuccessful are things like Saponaria and giant poppy pods. But for me, I really think those things are better early spring planted, like as soon as you can work the ground early, like March. They just haven't done the greatest fall planted for me. All of that whole list, Bupleurum, Larkspur, Nigella, and Orlea, I also will direct seed again, another succession in early spring, like in March. So then there are things that you can transplant in the fall that will overwinter. And when I mean overwinter, I'm talking like they're hardy to my zone, no cover. These are not protected. They're not under row cover. They're not under low tunnels. They're just in the field. And I have found things that I transplant that overwinter are things like Feverfew does really, really well. Sweet William does very well here. Campanula usually does well. I just did a video about Campanula. My fall field planted Campanula did not do very great this past winter. It did okay. You can watch the video. It's done better in the past, but we had a very cold winter. Yarrow does really well, which is a perennial, but a short-lived perennial, but that also does really great fall planted. And sometimes Delphinium does too. I always think my Delphinium is like all dead, or like 80% of it's dead, and really like 20% of it's dead. So it does pretty good fall planted as well. Things that I think are difficult or that I've tried and have had a difficult time with, and again, this is just for me in my zone. If you're in a different place, it will be different for you. But people always talk about snapdragons. So I have tried to overwinter snapdragons in the field, no cover. multiple times and it has not worked. I also one fall left my snapdragons in the field and I didn't pull them out, like the snapdragons that had been in the ground all, season, and they reflushed and came back in the spring. They also got full of thrips and I had to trash them all. But I was like, oh, these are blooming. If for us, it really just depends on the winter. It depends on the winter if they're going to survive. And it is a little bit variety dependent, but it's not just the winter though for snapdragons. I've had snapdragons look great all winter, like freezing cold, 0 degrees Fahrenheit. And they look great until spring when it goes from 18 degrees to 65 degrees in a 24-hour period. And then they all just die. So I actually think that the snapdragons die more from the temperature swings than how cold your winter is. That's just my theory. It's been unreliable enough that I do not overwinter snapdragons in the field, no cover. That's kind of the conclusion I've come to. Other things I've tried is foxglove. I've only tried this once, but I'm just going to share my experience. I tried to overwinter foxglove this past year because it's supposedly hardy, and I had it in my tunnel also, but I also planted some of it in the field. Every single foxglove died. Like I said, it was not under any cover, no protection, but yeah, 100% death rate. So that did not do well for me. Like I said, we had a pretty cold winter, but that doesn't make me want to oh, let's try more foxglove. So I don't know. It did not do well. And it could be the specific variety. Sometimes it's like Madam Butterfly snapdragons are hardier than Potomac or, vice versa or something, right? So sometimes a certain variety will be more hardy. And so maybe that was something with the foxglove, but it did not survive. Okay, so what should you be doing right now? Like, what is the real takeaway here? So the real takeaway is it's July, and I'm talking about planting for fall, like I said, which is kind of broad term for whenever the weather is sort of like fall by you. What you should be thinking about now, or what's helpful to be thinking about now, is what seeds do you need in the end of August or the middle of September or whenever you're going to fall plant. So you can have those seeds ready and on hand. It's the middle of July, so we're talking like not that far away. I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be planting these things. And if you're starting plugs, like you should be definitely having those plugs now. Like you probably should have started your plugs a few weeks ago, but you still have time to order plugs for fall. And so that's mostly what I do, is order plugs for the fall. I have my plugs all ordered. I've got them all scheduled to come in the very end of August, and then I can plant them out in the field, wherever I'm going to be planting them. I have plugs also ordered for my tunnel. They're going to come in the middle of October. It just is really helpful to always be thinking ahead. And I know it's a little crazy to be thinking ahead for the next year, but I pretty much have, my whole crop plan for the spring of 2027 already planned. I have all of my corms ordered, all of my bulbs ordered. I have all of my plugs ordered. I'm actually getting a woody order to get like a small woody order from a local nursery together. So I can get that stuff planted. And, so just like you really have to be forward thinking and thinking about what is your spring going to look like. And if you can get these seeds in the ground, they will pay you back in dividends. Even if you're just direct seeding annuals, I'm not saying you have to buy all these perennials and everything, but if you're just starting out, buy some Bupleurum and Nigella and Orlea and Larkspur. Those are pretty hardy to a lot of zones. And if you plant that, you'll be ahead in the spring and you'll have a really great spring and it will really help you. One other thing to think about is strategically planning your beds. So a lot of times it's not the cold temperatures that will kill your plants in the winter, it's the wet feet. So, you want to be thinking about where you have the best drainage on your farm. I know for me, like I have certain places that I literally can't even get into in the spring, but I have other places on my farm that's where I really prioritize having my direct seeded and, fall planted crops. So that way, because I know that they're going to have the best environment for overwintering. And I'm not going to be planting them over here in this section because that's where all the water drains all winter and the snow is going to melt and it's just going to be a mess. So just think about that, where it might work the best on your farm. That can be really helpful. And don't forget to be thinking about where those spring crops are going to go this fall so you can have beds prepped and know where you're going to have stuff for your early spring direct seeded stuff as well, or your plugs that come. So I'd love to hear from you, like what has worked to overwinter in your zone. In the companion video I just did, I kind of asked people to comment about what has worked for them. And we just got such great comments about what's been working for different people in different parts of the country. And I think that's such a valuable resource, again, in this community. And it really helps other flower farmers out and we can all learn from each other. So if you did that, thank you so much. And I'd love to know what your favorite wintered, fall planted crop is. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to know how I grew these hydrangeas that are behind me and what variety and everything that they are, you can check out the video I did about growing hydrangeas as well. And I hope you all are doing well. It's like end of July and it's a tough time for flower farmers. So I hope you're hanging in there and drinking water, and you take 90 minutes to go for a walk with a friend or watch the sunset or go to Lake Michigan. That's one of our favorite things to do as a family, is go to the lake, or, just do something away from the farm for a little bit. And remember to do the little things and gather the little bits. I know I wanted to press some flowers with my daughter so we can treasure those things up for the winter time. And it's something we enjoy doing. And I literally have not pressed flowers since I think like May or June. And that's really, just something that I don't prioritize. So that's what I'm going to do soon, I hope, is just go collect little bits of flowers and press them like little tiny hydrangea petals and the little leaves from the baptisia, and just create these little treasures. Or if it's drying flowers or just taking photographs, don't forget to do those things and actually enjoy the beautiful farm that is growing all around you, because it is really easy to see all the weeds and all the work and all the crops that need to get netted and planted, and just so much harvested. So I hope you're also taking a moment for that, and I'll see you in the next video.